Hey everybody, welcome to the second video of a series on videos of running the Kodak Zi6 video camera on lithium ion batteries or 18650s. For those who watched the last video at the very end, I found a diode that provided a decent enough voltage drop to where the camera would shut off before before the lithium ion battery source got too low. That way it wouldn't over discharge the batteries. But I noticed the 1N4007 diodes I had were getting extremely hot. I mean, yeah, like burning hot. I initially had just one of them in the circuit, but later I noticed that the Zi6 is a little more power hungry than I thought it was. Here's a look at the diodes themselves. The Zi6 pulls around an amp of power when recording at HD60. And of course, as the battery voltage drops, it picks up the current to compensate. That's how the DC-DC converter thing works, to deliver, more or less a constant voltage to certain devices that need a constant voltage. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and double two up in parallel. They still got very hot. So we now have. These two are in parallel. That's combined. These are rated for 1 amp a piece, so 2 amps combined. And I noticed they were still getting hot. So I was like, okay, we're going to find a different kind of diode. And that's what I've done here. Now we have a 1N5406 diode. This one came out of the rectification area of a old AT power supply. These are rated for 3 amps. That's why they are a lot more bulky in size. Now this time I decided not to go to cover these in heat shrink. I figured it'd be more beneficial for the diode to be able to disperse heat a little better. Because I think how I'm going to have this done when this is fully done is I'm going to have these wires snake through the old battery compartment and just have this one maybe hot glued, had the wires hot glued in a certain area to where the diode can just simply sit there and disperse heat. The diode should not get hot enough to melt plastic or anything like that. I mean, the thing's made of plastic itself. So anyways, here we had this ready to go as a test. Our battery is partially discharged. It's sitting at 3.54 volts resting voltage. Let's go ahead and power on the camera and see what happens here. Again, there we go. Very stiff switch. It likes to jam over in the if the switch jams in the pull state, it actually drains the battery, believe it or not. So we're going to do our simple little test here. First, I'm actually going to go ahead and delete what's already on this card, which is essentially just random recordings. Delete them all. Yep. It essentially just formatted the card in a way. Then we'll go back to record. HD60. Battery is at 3.34 volts. We're now recording. Our battery voltage has dropped to 3.24. According to this, it still says we have a full battery, but one thing I have to keep in mind, there it just dropped a little bit. One thing to keep in mind with this is the on-screen battery indication is no longer metered correctly, because it's looking for a whole different range of voltage, and when it's over a certain voltage, it just says full. That's why yesterday when I was doing the initial testing without any diodes in the circuit, even though our lithium ion cell, the worn out one over there was it was actually running it down to like 2.8 or 2.7 volts, or lower than that actually, and it still said it had a full charge, which is obviously not correct. Our diode, let's see, I think I burnt my finger yesterday when I was cooking or something. Can't remember which. Diode is pretty hot, but you know, it's not scorching hot like it was last time. Now, one thing you have to just have to keep in mind is these diodes, you know, they're going to get hot. Now, that's obvious. They're going to get hot. The thing I care about is I'm not pushing the diode to its max limit. You know, keeping some headroom in there. Because the last thing I want to have happen is the diode gets so freaking hot that it burns out or catches fire and catches the whole camera on fire. That wouldn't be nice. Because you imagine having this camera inside the wetter case, and let's say during the summertime, if things out in the sunlight, it gets hot inside that thing. So with that additional heat, the diode's going to get hotter. So we gotta make sure we have plenty of wiggle room there. So I am not going to actually run heat shrink tubing over this diode this time. We're at 3.2 volts. And it's funny, it says that we have almost a full battery. As I mentioned, it doesn't meter correctly. So now, in this case, when it starts to show that the battery isn't full, you know that your battery is actually, theoretically, getting low. Because this will drop off pretty quickly. Let's see. So we're at 3.2 volts about. You know, diode is kind of hot to the touch, but you know they're going to get hot to the touch, regardless of not. This is a much bigger diode, designed to better withstand the heat, better disperse the heat. Because essentially the diode's acting like a resistor in this case. Because there's about, I think this diode, according to the data sheet, said like 1.1 volts, you know, voltage drop. I don't know exactly how much voltage drop we're getting right now. I could meter it and see. I could just touch my terminal there and see what the voltage is there. Let me set the camera down. We'll actually find out. Because what it's doing is whatever electricity, you know, whatever voltage doesn't go to the camera gets dispersed as heat. So it's not the most efficient design. But with a camera that you can't easily go in and modify your firmware, yes, you gotta do things the alternative way. And believe me, I would love to be able to modify this camera's firmware. Okay, the voltage on the other side of our diode is 2.35. We're at 3.1. About 3.1 volts on before the diode, and after the diode we're at 2.35. So we're getting about the same voltage drop as we did before, which I'm totally satisfied with. It says that our battery is getting low. As I mentioned, it drops off pretty quickly once it starts to meter the battery's getting low. Diode's getting pretty hot. Yeah, there's simply no around the diode getting hot. It simply isn't going to happen. But I don't think the diode is getting quite as hot as it was, you know, the previous diodes here were. But this here is where the camera draws the most current. When the voltage going to the camera drops, it pulls more current to compensate. Because the internal DC-DC converter is having to pull more amps to compensate for the lower voltage. Essentially, you're getting the same amount of watts. It's just having to use more current when the voltage isn't there. So we're at 3.19 about. Let's go grab my infrared thermometer. Hopefully that doesn't cut off before we get back. Here we are. Come on, stupid thing. This is one thing I hate about the Zi6 is that stupid slow shutter. If I could hack the firmware, I would get rid of it completely. There's no sense in it. Anyways, we're at 3.18 volts. It says our battery's about dead, which would be in fact true for a lithium-ion cell at this point. Now my play touch would actually shut off before that. I think the play touch shuts off at about 3.6 volts. See what this thing's actually doing. Now this isn't the most accurate, I don't think, for applications like this, because the diode is so hot that you can't keep your finger on it for a very long amount of time. It's saying 37.4, which is not much more than human body temperature. Yeah, guys, this sync, as many videos I've done of computer power supplies, this camera's drawing an amp off that diode, and that's a pretty hefty sized diode. You just think on those really cheap end power supplies where they use those really small diodes in the 4 diode treatment rather than using a bridge rectifier. You gotta think about how hot those diodes get. So we've been recording on this for about 9 minutes now. We're at 3.15 volts. We're at 3 volts. Thing is still going. And it just quit. So right about 3 volts is where this thing terminates at. Now some of you guys may say that's a bit low for a lithium ion, but you gotta think of it like this. My flashlights, these, I think the low voltage warning on them is at about 2.9 or so. Somewhere in that area. And you can see our resting voltage is back up to about 3.4. 3.37 to be exact. So I say we're doing just fine there. So yeah, we're at about 3.4 volts. Now the diode, as I mentioned, the diode still got pretty hot. But, I think this is kind of be expected with these things. I just want to make sure that we are running a diode in a circuit at what being pushed to its absolute max, which I think a camera that's pulling maybe an amp or so should be plenty. There should be plenty of headroom for a diode like this. You might be wondering why I didn't use a resistor. Well, there's a pretty obvious reason for that. The resistor doesn't offer a constant voltage drop. The battery starts out at 4.2 volts as it's fully charged. In the simplest terms of putting it, the voltage drop across that resistor would vary upon the input voltage of the battery. So at a full charge, the voltage drop would actually be higher. Therefore, the resistor would actually be consuming, it would actually be putting out more heat. Whereas, the diode, if the battery's at 4.2 volts, is dropping it down to, to about 3.4. Or let's say when the battery is at 3 volts, it's dropping it down to 2.2 volts. So that voltage drop is constant, and it doesn't depend on the input voltage from the battery. That's why the diode that's why the diode here is useful. It offers a fixed voltage drop. That way, when you got a full charge on the battery, the voltage drop isn't higher, and you're actually delivering a higher voltage to the camera. And when the little DC to DC converter inside that camera is getting a higher voltage, it's not needing as much current to do its job. If you kind of get where I'm coming from here. So I got a few more things to do with this thing before I finalize this. Actually, what I'm going to end up doing here is I think this camera, I'm going to rebuild it into a new weather case camera. Because I've been looking. First, I'm going to see exactly how long this thing will go from a full charge battery to zero. Because I'm kind of hoping that by switching to 18650 lithium cells, I should have a longer runtime on the camera. Now, you have to think about it like this. With a single lithium-ion cell, it may be about the same as a pair of double A's. Because, these lithium cells, or at least, the LG Chem cells like this one here are rated for, the one I have are rated for 2200 milliamp hours. This Energizer nickel metal hydride AA is rated for 2300 milliamp hours. So, you're probably going to be getting about the same runtime off of a single 18650, but you run two in parallel, you effectively double the capacity. So it doubles the runtime. So the Zi6 may not have as much runtime as, let's say, the PlayTouch does, but the Zi6 in many areas actually outperforms the PlayTouch on colors and overall picture quality. The PlayTouch just happens to do better at night because it doesn't have that slow shutter crap that the Zi6 has. And that's the biggest gripe I have about the Zi6, to be honest with you. The Zi6, other than that, records better in 60 frames per second, has better colors, has a more vivid picture, more sharper picture than the PlayTouch, which is actually a newer product. So anyways, I think that's it for now. I guess I'll start up another video when I get to it. Hey everybody, I sure hope you guys enjoyed this video from Q Computer Channel. Remember to like the video, subscribe to Q Computer Channel for more updates, and remember to tick the bell so you actually get notified of these updates. Did you know that I am also on a second channel that's Bike Geek MTDX? Over there you'll find videos of bicycling, weather, elevators, and all sorts of other neat and interesting stuff. Feel free to subscribe to that channel as well. And again, I thank you for your support, and thanks for watching this video.